going to try to push my luck and record 2 of these at once. Let's see if that works. Okay, so number 12 is, I think, the only one in the practice exam that involves graphing, so I better do it. Alright, so all the functions that look like this, if I'm going to take a base that's greater than 1, so 2 to the x, 3 to the x, 10 to the x, even e to the x, pi to the x, it doesn't matter. All those are going to look like this. Swoop, that's essentially what they're going to look like. So what makes this, like, say, e to the x? So if I have a graphing question, I usually, but not always, provide the graph paper of some sort. And e to the 0 is 1, e to the anything is 1. But the important thing is that you put a point somewhere on the axis and label it with a 1, and then you just go up somehow. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. Perfect is nice, but I'm not expecting it. So the important thing also is with this, any kind of exponential curve, 4 to the x, it doesn't matter. They're all going to look pretty much the same. This is where your asymptote is. You only have a horizontal asymptote, not a vertical asymptote. All right. So what does this function say? First of all, you need 3 to the x as your starting graph. Let's go ahead and try to see if this works. 3, 9. If you want, you don't have to, but if you want, you can make it that way. There you go. So this would be 3 to the x. So what would negative 3 to the x look like? Well, it would look the same, but in mirror image. Right? So if you wanted to make a graph of minus 3 to the x, it would look kind of like this. That's really dramatic. Okay, so you can take some artistic license if you want and just say, okay, I don't want to draw this quite so dramatically. I'm not going to be that picky. Now, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to add 2 to that. And since I have a piece of software you probably don't have, is this lovely thing. See if I can do this. I need to add 2. I'm making it work. There we go. Okay, I can add 2, and then I can put my asymptote back in. There we go. I might as well put my axis back in. I'm losing that. Alright, so now I have a pretty good picture. You can see on the answer key, I didn't do quite as good of a job with that. I made kind of a mess, I guess. But as long as I get the x and y intercept, I was okay, because I'll get to that question later. So anyway, this is close enough. This is close enough because later in the exercise I'm going to ask for the x and y intercept, and because I do, and I'm going to ask for example, this is the asymptote y equals 2, that's going to be requested. And part of the reason for asking all these questions later in the exercise is to make sure that you're double checking your graph and it's kind of plausible. Okay, label both of your axes, fine, I just labeled them. And then this is where 1 is. If you use a 1-by-1 protocol, like if you just don't say anything, I'm going to assume you're counting 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and that's what my assumption is. So I'm going to assume you're using a 1-by-1 box, but if you label it differently, then your labeling takes priority. So for example, if you're going ahead and labeling and saying this distance is 1, then I'll accept your markings. But if you say nothing, I just make the assumption that you're doing 1-by-1. Okay, sketch the function. If there's an x-intercept, draw it and label it. Ooh, y-intercept is what? What's the y-intercept? In this case, it's actually 1, right? Which is kind of funny because it started out there and then it flipped back down again. So you can just say 0, 1, or y of 0 equals 1. Or you could say something like this. Y of 0 is minus 3, 0, plus 2, which is minus 1 plus 2, which is 1. Any one of those things is perfectly fine. The x-intercept is actually a little harder because we start off with this function, and let's say even if we didn't draw the graph, if we were completely confused, we could still solve this puzzle the following way. We could just solve for x. We get this far before we have to take the natural log, or base 10, log base 10, it doesn't matter to me. Natural log of 2 over natural log of 3 equals x, and plug it into your calculator and you get 0.63093, and certainly that is good enough. The asymptote is y equals 2. If there's a vertical asymptote, no, this is bogus. This is a teaser question. All you have to do is say there's no vertical asymptote, and then you get 5 points for that. Okay? So hopefully that's helpful. The hard part is sketching. You have to still remember all your translations from the first exam. They are still valid questions.